Hey, it's Niamh from post Giro Donne 2023. I survived another one, 9 days this time. Well, actually 8 days because first stage was cancelled. But no less tough. I think, this was an unrelenting Giro. I mean, every day was a tough day. Always up and down, a lot of climbing, and not really many sprint days in the end. But the last stage was another hot one in Sardinia. Some more like notable climbs, but not super steep. So just the kind of climb that drags on, long, and enough pace that you're just dripping with sweat and just I feel like your perceived rate of exhaustion as the exertion goes so much out of whack in the heat. Is not much power feels like a lot. Also at the end of a stage race. But anyway, we came over the top of that climb as a team in 3. Blanca, Anna Shackley and I, and there were quite a lot of attacks after the climb, and we also were quite keen to try take one last opportunity, getting a breakaway. But nothing really stuck. And then it was downhill fast all the way to the finish, so we sprinted for Blanca. But it was a tricky full gas sprint, that one. And Blanca just, it was difficult to Jack and I aren't the best lead out train, but she rode to top 10 or something. But it was not a bitter end to the Giro. I think we were really happy with the Giro as a team. We definitely had a lot to celebrate, and it was super enjoyable and super cool. Obviously, like, my own expectations I didn't really meet. To be honest, my riding was a little bit inconsistent, and that's not what you need for a tour and GC. But I think it's also part of the challenge, to just put that behind you and like accept that sometimes. I also learned a lot about myself on this tour, and it feels really different to race when I don't have maybe Damie or Mullen around. It's just different. It's not that I see it any lesser way or something. I enjoy both. So we still, I think, achieved definitely our goals as a team, some stage wins and podiums, and it's maybe not what everyone's used to seeing from Worx, not all the winning, but I think it's not the point of our team. We relish every victory in its own. We don't expect winning, and I think that's really important to note that every race is a race, and this Giro was still super cool, a challenge and an adventure with the hotels and the crazy organisation, cancellation of stages, weather, crazy descents, climbing, heat. Italy throws it all at you, but it's a beautiful country to ride and race through. And there's something so special about the Giro. And I hate that it's a little bit shadowed by the Tour now, because I think it's a special race in its own right. That was the Giro, and now I'm going to take a rest. Last night we all stayed an extra night in Sardinia, so we had a night on the beach, swimming, relaxing, having some drinks, and eating pizza and tiramisu and gelato. And we deserved it, because it was a hard 9 days, and that's also the other side of the sport, You're allowed to celebrate and enjoy the success, and I think that's just as important. So now I'm going to take some rest. I'm back in Girona, and bearing with the heat. But and I look forward to some more racing at the end of the season. Yeah, it's going to be good. Thank you for having me, Abby and Co. And I'm definitely not going to listen to these back to these podcasters because I hate listening to my voice. But I hope they're enjoyable. So yeah, see you next time.
We opened this episode with an audio diary from Niamh Fisher-Black of the SD Worx team, reflecting back on the Giro Donne from home. Now let's dive into the full episode. Hello. Welcome to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. We are here after, I recorded 9 days worth of episodes. It was a lot, but it was really fun. I was super excited to have Hannah Barnes, current professional on Uno X, with me on that journey, and I hope people enjoyed those episodes. We have a couple audio diaries today as well from the last stage and a kind of like day after thought word vomit sesh. So really excited. Those will be later in the episode. And a little bit of Iris Slappendel, a little bit of Gracie, Elvin. Yeah, it's going to be a great episode today. I'm joined by Matt Deneve.
Hi, thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
And I'm so excited. Loren Rowney is back.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back.
And we have a new voice on the podcast today. If you listen to our podcast elsewhere, then you'll know her voice from audio diaries from the Tour Down Under. Tills, Matilda Raynolds, hello.
G'day, long-time listener, first-time caller. Very excited. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk all things Giro, maybe even get into a tiny bit of the Tour de France Femmes, avec Zwift to come at the end of the episode, because that is on everyone's mind at the moment. But before we dive into that, this episode of the Wheel Talk podcast was made possible by the generous support of our members. Monthly memberships start at just $11.99, or you can save 30% on an annual payment. For more information, head on over to escapecollective.com/join. And thank you so much to everyone who's already a member. It is making our Giro and Tour de France Femmes coverage possible. If you've checked out escapecollective.com, it is just hopping right now with great stuff. So definitely check that out. All right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Taylor Swift says it all the time, and now I'm just like, that's the coolest thing. We're here to chat about the Giro, so let's talk about it. Because there was 9 daily episodes on the day-to-day, today we're just going to kind of touch on the major themes of the race, and what better place to start than the woman of the race herself, Annemiek van Vleuten, in her final Giro. I don't know about you all, but I felt like this really weird, like sadness, nostalgia when she crossed the line on Sunday, that this was her final day in pink, her final Giro Donne, after she's really made this race her own since 2017, after that horrendous crash at the Olympic road race. She was already a really incredible rider up to that point, but man, after that race, she burst onto the scene as a real force. And since 2017, she's won 4 of the 6 Giros that she raced. Of the two that she didn't win, she finished 3rd, and she crashed out on the 7th or 8th stage in the pink jersey in 2020. So it's really been, at the Giro, it's been the age of Annemiek.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that feeling, Abby. I think for so many seasons and years, we've been almost against Annemiek, sort of saying beat her and won't somebody rival her. But I think I really had a moment of thinking, I don't see Annemiek as the GOAT, but I really see her as someone that just has propelled women's cycling forward beyond majority, like any other rider. You know, it's really hard in cycling to say she broke barriers because there isn't a time in cycling. It's not like the 4-minute mile or the 2:30 marathon or the 9-hour Ironman where you say, wow, like that woman broke that barrier. And from there, it's been, broken so many times before. And I think Annemiek really took the sport and has taken the sport to another level, which everyone you're seeing now, the peloton starting to catch up, doing these camps and, you know, the training that they're doing and the professionalism in their training. I think that's how I see Annemiek, as someone who's taken the sport to another level. And for that, we should be so grateful, and just an incredible athlete.
Yeah, in terms of the training, I was talking to Hannah about this in the final daily episode, that she's really pioneered altitude training. And that's become such a massive part of all of cycling, men's and women's cycling. But it was happening before Annemiek in the men's peloton, and she really made it a thing in the women's. And I wrote a kind of retrospective about Annemiek and the Giro that's on escapecollective.com if anyone wants to read it. And I think I say that she took it from being a training tool to a way of life, and it's really become a way of life. I mean, I'm in Andorra, and like yesterday there was 7 professional women having a barbecue. I saw Pauline Ferrand-Prévot out training. I saw Demi Vollering out training. Like, it's just a massive thing to come to altitude now. You can't really be a top professional without doing it, and that's really thanks to Annemiek.
Yeah, and she used it so effectively again, didn't she? You know, her early season, to be honest, was just really average from her lofty standards. And there was talk in the lead up, you know, we talked about it on the podcast about would she be able to get back to those levels and that she's had in the years gone by. And yeah, she did. You know, she was head and shoulders above everyone else, and won the race by almost 4 minutes, and used the altitude and the build up so effectively. And I believe she's back at altitude now ahead of the Tour, and it's probably going to go well for her there as well. So yeah, she's, you know, there was those videos a few years ago of her training with the Green Edge men a couple of days in the pre-season, and you know, they kind of made a splash, and since then it has become the thing. And you know, I spoke to Grace Brown probably a month or two ago about whether she was going to altitude before the Tour, and she kind of begrudgingly said, I've decided not to, but acknowledged that she was probably giving away a few percent by doing that because everybody else was doing it. So yeah, Annemiek has changed the game in that way, and I think it'll only continue to see more people training at altitude ahead of big targets like this.
Can I just say, how good is it doing the post-race preview than the pre-race preview that Amy Jones was a part of and had to us all thinking that maybe Annemiek wouldn't be the back to her best days. But in defense of Amy Jones, because she's not here to defend herself, I think that's just what's so good about cycling, is that the best cycling is when you don't get the script right, when it doesn't go to plan. So I'm just glad I'm a part of the post-race analysis than the pre-race. Thanks.
I think, but it would have been Gracie, I'm sure, that said you can just never underestimate her. And I think months ago we spoke about it. We've spoken about it a lot. The fact that she wasn't having the season she wanted, but maybe this is just how she had planned her season all along, you know, with these big goals, and to do the double and try and win both the Giro and, she's going for the triple, I suppose. She wasn't at her best at the Vuelta, but I think she almost knew that. And then she's shown at the Giro, is she back to her best? I don't know. We've said that the margins have closed between her and the other competitors, but I just have this feeling that this has always been part of the plan for her final year. And, you know, Annemiek is just so calculated in everything that she does, and the people that she works with, that she always has this belief in herself that I think not many athletes have had. So it was nice to hear from her that she knew she was in good form, but to actually, you know, see that on paper and demonstrate the pure dominance she had over the field was really cool to see.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there was a lot of questions in defense of Amy about Annemiek's form going into it because of that. And already on the second stage, it was like, oh, okay, well, this is back. The Giro that we're going to watch. Yeah. The second stage that, you know, like Hannah, a current professional, called for Voss, ended up being one of the major GC days, and the first stage of 3 that Annemiek won throughout the race. And she really just, yeah, I think part of this is one of the major themes that I actually asked a couple of our audio diarists about today, to if they wanted to give a couple like final thoughts on the race was the effect that the Tour has on the Giro. And let's actually listen to Nina Kessler's thoughts really quick.
Well, good morning. The day after, came home pretty late yesterday. It took a while before my suitcase arrived and my bike. But then my mom picked me up, brought me back home. I walked in, just like dropped all my stuff in the living room like I always do. And then in the morning I'm like, oh no, I have to like clean all this again, like unpack. But in like 3 days I have to pack it again because I go to the race in Stuttgart. But it was really nice to sleep in my own bed. And I didn't have breakfast yet, but I definitely go to the supermarket and will buy some nice fresh bread. And finally I'm gonna get my treat, my chocolate sprinkled bread. It was it was a good stage race, and always after like if you finish a Grand Tour, like a stage race like this, there's always some happiness in the team. And like I said, there was pizza but also a little bit of rush, and everybody's like packing their stuff and have to go somewhere else or to the airport, and a little bit of rush. But it's also it's nice to be home. I have to say, I think this was my 5th Giro, and I think it was a tough one. You can definitely see that the level from women's cycling is growing, and I also think what it made it hard is like normally in like stage races the first couple days they are hard because there's no GC settled yet, so everybody's still fighting for the GC. But sorry, yeah, a little tired. But then after like a couple days, you notice that the GC riders also want to like have a kind of break and just like let it go. But the whole stage race, there was like no early breakaway or like calmness. The race was like always on, and you know, you have like team meetings, and then after like half the Giro, then a lot of the DSs will say like the same thing: be in the early break. If there's like an early break, just be in it. So what will happen is that every rider that had to be in the early break is gonna ride to be in the early break, and that's what kept the speed also so high. And yeah, there was no early break, so there was no like calmness in the race the whole week. But yeah, for me it was also good because of course I was coming back from an injury, so this was a good moment to get stronger again. And so next week going to Stuttgart and then to the Tour de France. Some girls that, for example, Lorena, also, she stopped after, I think, was it 6 days or 5 days? And that is also because the Giro this year is pretty close on the Tour de France. So a lot of teams I know were struggling to have like a full team at the Giro and a full fresh team at the Tour de France. It is because you have to recover from this, and also if you want to do like really good in the Giro and in the Tour, you have to train for it. Like girls want to go on altitudes, and if you want to go on altitude before the Giro, then the effect is already less in like the Tour. So it was hard planning. Like for me it was pretty good because I was standing still for 7 weeks, didn't race, and was only on the trainer. So for me it was kind of like I won't say a training camp because this was pretty hard training camp, but to like develop again some race distance and some hardness and get some climbs in the legs, because obviously the Netherlands is pretty flat. So for me it's a good thing, but yeah, it is quite hard to plan, and especially if you want to do well in both stage races. And yeah, we're gonna see how Annemiek is gonna do it. Of course, she did the Vuelta and then the Giro and then the Tour. But yeah, she's a legend. It's insane how she raced again this Giro. And you can always see in the GC, like every GC rider has always like a bad day, but we'll come back on it. But Annemiek just doesn't have those bad days. I think, yeah, she had that little crash in the downhill, but that's it. And yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I keep drawing. But yeah, she just keeps going. And yeah, next year, I don't know if it will be weird to not have her at the start, because it's also like, if you imagine, like we kind of riders like retired already, it keeps going, and then there will be a new legend, and it will open up probably the GC a bit more, and maybe there will be a bit more fight. And but yeah, we will see what happens. I don't know, and it's gonna just be really different, I guess, when she is not there, I have to say. And maybe there will be a bit more fight, but it's also yeah, like I said, she's a legend, and it's also a pretty honor to race against her. So today, it's a day of unpacking my bag, washing all my stuff. Maybe if I want to go for a little ride. But for the rest, I'm just chilling and doing nothing. Well, thank you all. And yeah, see you soon. Bye.
To the point that Annemiek might not be at her best, and we will find out in a couple weeks' time. The Tour presence has changed the game of the Giro, because we didn't have SD Worx at their best at this race. I think Niamh did an honorable job trying to represent the team, and obviously they still won 2 stages with Lorena Wiebes and with Blanca Jesus Christ. Blanca Voss. And so it wasn't a bad race for them by any means, but it wasn't the SD Worx show that we've seen all year. And so it wasn't like Annemiek was up against the best team in the business at the moment. And even to that, you know, her main rival in my eyes was Elisa Longo Borghini, who crashed out early in the race. So after winning a stage. So it wasn't a level playing field. So I do think, Loren, you have a good point that we don't know if this is at her best, or if it was the Tour effect on the Giro, that it's just not the best of the best for the peloton showing up at this race like it has been before the Tour impacted the calendar.
And I think for Annemiek as well, like the way she raced every stage, she was racing for the win, but also she just wanted to go hard. You could see that. She wanted a hard race, and I think that's all part of the plan. She's off to altitude, I believe, now to do her final block before she tapers. So I saw Tills shaking her head that she's like, I don't know, I think she's going to be good at the Tour.
Only that I was thinking, it seemed like on a couple of those stages, Loren, that she was not willing to let the break go because she needed a hard training day. Yeah, so it was hard
exactly.
to know, that she's she's coming in tapered at all. So it's as you say, it's so hard to know. Was that just a really good block of training? And I think for everyone though, we just hope she's at her peak, and that was just again scraping the surface.
Well, I just want to see a massive battle between her and Demi.
Oh, yeah.
Movie Star have been great. I think they're going to bring a fantastic team. There's going to be great teams at the Tour. But, SD Worx is going to show up with their absolute A team. And it's just going to be, I think everyone's hoping that follows women's cycling for an epic battle. And, Demi previously in all the other races has just been head and shoulders above. So I think we just all want to see that.
Yeah,
It's so weird the script's been flipped. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
It's so weird the script's been flipped because it used to be like, if only anyone could beat Annemiek. And now it's like, okay, Annemiek, please beat SD Worx.
Yeah, we've been hyping up that battle for the whole season, really, haven't we? Vollering versus Van Vleuten at the Tour, and that's only gotten more intriguing as we get closer. Van Vleuten's found the form that we knew she probably would, and meanwhile, Demi's up at altitude, living the van life and doing yoga in the mountains and, making everybody jealous and seemingly very relaxed and all that. But it'll be interesting to see how their respective paths, take them to the Tour. Will Demi be able to come up nicely? Will Van Vleuten be able to hold her form or even improve from the Giro? And how will they compare to each other? Because, Van Vleuten was obviously a level above at last year's Tour, but Vollering has improved so markedly this year and been so good for the early part of the season that you'd think they'd be closer together, but we just really don't know. And, we look at the Tourmalet later, and that's the Hautecam, isn't it, that they race? Or I'm getting myself...
The Tourmalet.
The Tourmalet, yeah. So that, a 17-kilometre climb, a tough climb, which would traditionally suit Van Vleuten over Vollering, but we just don't know. They haven't had that many battles on big climbs this year, and... it's such an intriguing battle, and I just hope that nothing gets in the way of those two being able to duke it out.
Yeah, they've only really had like one massive climb that they've battled against, and it was Vollering who came out on top of that duo, and Gaia Riolini was incredible. I loved Annemiek's quote after the 7th stage, I believe, when she won, and she was like, she finally got Gaia Riolini in front of me. It's just hilarious. She was so sassy this race. It was great. But I think since that defeat on that climb, Van Vleuten stepped it up so much that it's just like, going into the Tour, it's like we're all just, I hate this saying, but we're like licking our lips ready for like some completely insane bike racing. And
the other thing about that stage, the Tourmalet stage, is that there's the Col d'Aspin happens right before it, and it's quite similar to stage 7 of last year's Tour, where Van Vleuten just went really early on some early climb and just rode everyone off her wheel and won by like 4 or 5 minutes or whatever it was. So I think Vollering will be looking at that stage and be feeling quite nervous about the prospect of Van Vleuten going long and winning by a lot. So I think that'll obviously be a big battle that day, but I think that early climb will be quite decisive as well, actually.
It's hard to know what to take away from the Giro, just because the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift is having a far bigger impact on the Giro this year than last year, just because the Tour de France was untested for the women last year. I still believe, and I know riders who still felt like the Giro Rossa, the Giro Donne was still the premier biggest event of the calendar last year, and they were really targeting it, when I just think we've seen so many riders using it as training. They're either skipping it or they're coming straight down from altitude and potentially not coping, which I think may have affected Niamh Fisher-Black. So I just think it was a nice little taster, but certainly, hey, we're not going to go on about where its position is on the calendar. We can't change it, but certainly it's had a biggest impact on this year, I think, than last year.
Yeah, and a curious point will be the riders that have lined up at the Giro, how many of them actually do we know crossing over to the Tour? Because Annemiek is such a seasoned rider that she could handle that sort of load in her legs. Not to mention, I think, Abby, in all your race recaps, it was always mentioned about the heat. Now, that takes an incredible toll on your body. That's like being at altitude, actually, but racing at a super high heart rate. So I do wonder, for some of the younger riders who are planning on doing the double, how they'll cope with that.
Yeah, I think it'll be a week or so before we know exactly who is doing the double. I know from the audio diaries that Nina Kessler is doing the double. Yeah, there's multiple teams that just haven't made the call on the final Tour roster yet because of the Giro. Like Lidl Trek, for example, Elisa Longoborghini is now eyeing the Tour. She was before, but I think with her crashing out, having been on the best form she's been on this year, maybe even last year as well, I think Trek's going to focus heavily on her, but they're also, they're also thinking about riders like Brody Chapman, who didn't race the Giro but was supposed to but got sick, riders like Elisa Balsamo, who's back on her bike after her horrendous Ride London crash, and like Gaia Riolini finished third overall. It's a massive result for her, and she's super young, but with that kind of momentum going into the Tour, will they take her? So there's a lot of question marks around the race. I think for me, one of my biggest kind of things looking at the Giro, looking at the Tour to come, is what FDJ Suez is going to do. They had a really disappointing Giro, I would say, after finishing second last year with Marta Cavalli, and this year they really weren't a factor in the race at all, which was, they've kind of had a rough season, and I'm hoping that by the Tour and Tour Scandinavia coming up after, that they can rebound a bit, because it's such an awesome team that I just have so much respect for. And I'm curious how they're going to do, because Cecily looked like she was coming good in the later parts of the race, but still didn't have the top end to be there at the finish. I think another good point with this race, along with the heat, Loren, is that everyone said it was one of the fastest Giros they've ever raced. Sarah Roy, who's done, countless Giros, she said that this race was really fast, and every day was raced like a one day. We can actually hear from Sarah, so let's drop that in really quick.
I think that the Giro this year was a little different to the past editions that I can remember. This was my 8th one, but I think each stage was raced almost like a one-day race. So, there wasn't really a chill stage where you just kind of got to paddle along and, even if we just let a break go and then the bunch just chilled until the end for a while. But, that never really happened, and I think that's just kind of representative of women's cycling now, where every race really is sort of raced from the beginning. And so in the end, they end up being quite fast. There was a couple of longer stages of around 130k, but every race was well under 4 hours. But quite intense racing. So I guess you could say that it was quite a fast Giro. It wasn't really until the last stage that it was sort of easier, and that was a combination of having a headwind pretty much the entire way and also a lot of descending. Other than that, I'd say that each stage was on from the gun. So, it was pretty cool. I think it would be really interesting to see what happens once Annemiek retires. I think for races like this, if she's not there, then it kind of just opens up a bit more opportunities for the other sort of the next level GC riders just below her. And it could make things a little more interesting, because she does seem to win by a huge margin, almost like she's not really challenged for GC, unless Demi Vollering is there. So that's the other thing. Demi is really stepping up now and almost fulfilling that Annemiek role, where if she's in the race, she generally can win by a huge margin as well. So, I'm interested to see if once Annemiek retires, that then Demi almost just steps into that category where she, is the one to beat. And it might end up just being the same story all over again. And it's, it's awesome to have these standout riders, but it does, I guess, make it a little less interesting if the same people are winning all the time. But, I mean, they can't help being so good, I suppose. But that's the thing with the Giro being where it is in the calendar this year too, that Demi actually didn't start, obviously, because she's preparing for the Tour, which is a bigger goal for her. Well, must be, I'm just assuming. She wasn't at the start of the Giro, and so then Annemiek really wasn't challenged for GC, but they'll both be at the Tour. And I think if the calendar was slightly different, where the Tour was separated further from the Giro, then perhaps Demi would have lined up for the Giro as well. And then, the racing could have been quite different, or, maybe Annemiek wouldn't have won. And so, with the calendar, with the Giro being where it is, it might be nicer if we could sort of place these Grand Tours of ours. Now we have 3, the Vuelta, the Giro and the Tour. If they were all around the same time as the men's, maybe if they were sort of just off the back of the men's tour, and then, then the women's Vuelta started once theirs finished, or in the last couple of days. It could be a nicer calendar, maybe. I don't know. I guess there's a good reason I'm not the one who makes these decisions, but there's really only 13 days between the end of the Giro and the beginning of the Tour, and there are quite a few riders who pulled out of the Giro to prepare for the Tour, like Loren, for example. And then missing some big names as well. But I mean, for someone like me who has a different kind of role in a team in these Grand Tours, and also being a lot older, sort of a bit more resilient with these days on the bike, I think doing these 2 tours in full back-to-back is actually fine, and having just about 2 weeks between is a perfect amount of recovery. But I think being a GC rider, there's so much pressure and stress and mental energy that goes into performing at such a high level for quite a long time, 8 or 9 days. So having less than 2 weeks between 2 huge events like that's probably not ideal. We could see some better racing if the calendar was slightly different. But there's a lot of clashes this year. It's been a really interesting year with the racing, I think. There was one point earlier on a few months ago where there were like 4 races on, four or so things happening at the same time, and I remember being injured on the couch just thinking, holy shit, what do I watch? My God, there's so much going on. How are these teams getting to all these races? But now with the Tour, there's actually a lot of riders that won't have any racing for about 7 weeks or so if they're not selected for the Tour. So it's and then with the World Championships being in August, there's riders like Chloe Dygert, for example, or other track riders that won't be racing because they're preparing for the Track World Championships, which I think start just maybe 3 or 4 days after the Tour finishes. And again, if some of these track riders are doing the Tour, they may finish earlier. And so it just changes the whole dynamic of things. And I know it's really tricky to fit everything into one season. But I guess there's always going to be clashes. But this year's been particularly clashy. So hopefully next year it's a little bit better. But again, then we have the Olympics, so who knows?
So some really awesome insight from Sarah after the race, kind of thinking back on it. And I think it's definitely something to take into account going into the Tour, that the race was raced really, really hard every day. There wasn't a single breakaway stage the entire race. Bizarre. When was the last time that happened? I mean, that's so weird. Every day Hannah said, oh, tomorrow, hopefully a breakaway. It was never a breakaway, not once.
I think it was still quite, there was still a lot of attacks at different times, but I also, obviously we had only the 2 hours of coverage, and, I'm catching up with that in the wee hours in the morning, but it seemed like there was just so many teams that never featured, so many teams got, in quotation marks, nothing out of this Tour. And I just, I didn't even see a lot of those World Tour teams on the screen. So not only were they not getting results, I wasn't seeing them get much coverage either. So it's just, But yeah, and I also think the heat, Loren, I wrote down, like, I keep coming back to, I just feel like the heat is going to play such a vital role in the Tour de France Femmes. I think it's going to, like, imagine if it's hot over there now, another 3 weeks, it's going to be absolutely roasting for these guys.
Yeah, Matt, are you going to pack a jacket? I don't even know if I'll pack a jacket.
Yeah, I will.
Jealous.
I've been caught out too many times at the tour at the top of mountains, so yes, I will.
I'm so excited. I'm sorry.
I'm so jealous. I just think it's, again, like I think I said this before, it's just really untested. Like, I was even thinking about Niamh Fisher-Black, like coming down from altitude. Even for the women, I just don't think there's been many studies done into athletes that young doing that amount of endurance training at that age.
Yes.
Obviously they've had years and years and huge blocks of men doing it, but when I think of endurance athletes, I think of like people who race Ironman, triathlon, possibly marathon, but even that's, you know, between 2:30. And there hasn't really been that much study on the impact of that. And it's just, you know, these riders are getting younger and younger. So I think at times it's going to go well. And then other times it's just for no apparent reason, it's not going to work because it's still so new. As we talked about, Annemiek sort of brought this in and now everyone's doing it, but it's so new and untested. And we can't just look at the guys and go, oh, that's worked for them, when the women's, you know, are so different and the makeup from the men, and, you know, sort of peak so much later in their age and career. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
And Annemiek is like such a bad this is going to sound bad, but it's not, it's not bad like as it sounds. Yeah, she's a bad example to follow because she's just the amount of mileage she does is just nuts. Like I would advise literally 0 people to try to replicate her training. If you see it on Strava, no one should ever replicate that because it's just mad the amount of kilometers she does. I remember like being a pro and following her on Strava and being like, this is why I'm never going to be good because like no one can do that amount of training. And I think like for her, altitude works super well. But yeah, it is a good question, Tills, like how well does it work for the younger riders or for anyone? Hannah said yesterday or Sunday that it's a really individual thing, but people are just kind of like, okay, Demi's doing it, Annemiek's doing it, we should do it too, without really looking into whether or not it is working. And I know, like, having lived with a professional who has had altitude go very poorly for him in the past, it can definitely have a negative effect.
And I think on that point, firstly, like, Annemiek is the first to say years ago that
don't do what I do.
Exactly, pretty much.
Don't try this at home, kids.
Particularly when it came out that video, the videos that went viral when she was training with a man and everything, she did come out and say, like, this works for her. But I think people forget as well sometimes, you brought it up, Tills, the age difference. I mean, Annemiek really, for me, 2016, I raced with her and she was good. And at the Olympics, she was going to win. She was fantastic. But it was really after the Olympics that it was like, holy wow, she is something else. But she'd been racing since 2008, I think, or 7. I'm not quite sure when her career started. And she was older. And, you know, she's approaching 40 now. But we're looking at these young riders and we're talking about 20 to 24-year-olds, sometimes 19. And yes, okay, we've got the freaks like Pogacar and the men's peloton doing what they're doing. But again, you can't compare men and women, and I don't know what they're doing. But it's just, yeah, it's a whole different ball game now. And on the topic of altitude, it really doesn't work for everyone. And, you know, the AIS was famous for the altitude camps. They have a facility, you live high, train low, and they did multiple studies on it. And honestly, some athletes, I remember Shara Giller, I think she used to come out of it absolutely flying. And then there were other athletes that just really didn't do much for them. So, yeah, it's case by case. It works great for some. Annemiek is one of those that seems to adapt to it. And for others, it just doesn't work, but you have to test it.
We're so quick to forget that progression of Annemiek. Sorry, Abby, like you forget that she was a domestique. She didn't come out and for a very long time, you know, during Gracie's era, you know, racing for Gracie and that era of her evolving herself into that is I think we forget that a lot. And that's why I do call her, like, I don't call her the GOAT, but I think, you know, she hasn't won through various eras. Like it has been the more previous era that we've been a part of, where we've seen this incredible talent and almost freak-like, you know, athleticism that we've seen from her. But I think young athletes need to see where she's come from and to be looking at her age and progression.
And I think, I don't want to harp on too much about it, but Vos is a great example of an athlete that won the World Championships at 19 years of age, first year pro, unheard of, right? And she was so dominant. When I entered the sport, it was just Vos, Vos, Vos. And I remember one of the male pros just joking with me and saying, isn't it just always a race for second with you guys? And I was like, well, yeah, okay. She can sprint, she can climb, she can do everything. Then she completely burnt out at the age of about, I think, 24, 25. She burnt out. And, you know, now
she disappeared.
She did. She disappeared for a while and she reset and she's come back and she is the GOAT, really, if you think about it. The span of her career and what she's won and just what she's done is just incredible. But again, that's a great example of a young rider who was just so talented and went too deep for too long.
I want to get to the GOAT in a second because she had an interesting, not the best week of racing, but just on the altitude. For anyone who's listening who might be like a young rider or someone who's curious about altitude training, my experience with it to be successful is you really need to dial in your nutrition before going to altitude, because you're burning a lot more. You're burning the candle at every end when you're at altitude. So you can't have any hiccups in your nutrition if you're going to go to altitude to train. So that's the last, just if anyone's curious about training tips. Yeah, there you go. Whole new.
I wrote it down. I wrote it down. It was.
We talked about tech in like the last episode for like 20 minutes, and now we're talking about training tips. So this is totally just ridiculous territory for us. Let's talk about the GOAT. I think for Annemiek, like we're going to be talking about her a lot more in a couple weeks, I'm sure. So we can move on from Annemiek a bit. But yeah, I did write a story on that progression of her going from domestique to kind of the Giro rider of our time. So if you're interested in that, it exists. In terms of Vos, okay, so I was looking back through the stats, and this is the first time that Vos has raced the Giro and not won a stage since 2006.
Crazy.
And on that occasion, she still finished second overall.
She would have to be the most disappointed rider coming away from it.
Her and
from
Chloe,
the sounds of it,
maybe.
And Elisa.
Very drama-filled week. But I think for Vos, like going with the kind of thought of going into the Tour, which we assume she will be one of the riders going to the Tour from the Giro. She's not had a great year. A lot of that has to do with the surgery she had earlier in the year. But going into the Giro, I think she would have thought she was on better form. And from riders in the race, it sounds like she just doesn't look very good at the moment. She doesn't look like the Vos that we're used to. She doesn't look like she's on form. Mm-hmm. And that sprint that she came second in, the first one, on stage 8, when she finished second behind Blanca Vos, she looked like maybe she had a mechanical, but it wasn't that. She just didn't have the legs, which is wild when you think about it. Like, when was the last time that Vos was perfectly positioned and didn't mess up a sprint and didn't win it? I mean, not just a sprint, but like a sprint against not Wiebes, you know? Like that stage was tailor-made for her and she couldn't win it. And that's just... It's weird. We're in like uncharted waters for the last couple years. Since she came back from that hiatus, she's really been one of the top riders in the game. And this year we've seen basically nothing of her. And I fully assumed she was going to win a stage of the Giro and her 33rd Giro victory. And it didn't happen, which is just crazy.
So many of those finishes though that we've seen Vos in, like you think, how are you there? Like you shouldn't be there up with you shouldn't be going toe to toe with Charlotte Kool. And so I do think so many of the wins and performances that Vos has had has been race smarts. Just she's always in the right position. If for any young riders out there, again, training tips, race tips, if you ever get the privilege to watch be in a race with Marianne Vos, she's like a Zwift beacon. You just want to see whatever she's doing throughout the race. Like she's incredible to watch. However, I think, again, it's sort of an example of riders almost catching up to her. So I think, Annemiek is a very different rider from Vos in the stages that she wins. And again, I think the whole lift of the peloton is affecting Vos's performance as well. But as you say, she's not at 100% fitness and probably has that kick like we've seen her. But because she can get around as probably the smartest bike racer in the peloton, she's still getting herself into those positions.
She'll also be at the Tour in a few weeks, and being the champion that she is, she knows how to get up for big races. And yeah, she didn't get the result she wanted at the Giro, but I can't imagine there'd be too many times in her career where she'd miss out on one target and then miss out on the next one. So I would be surprised if she doesn't feature heavily at the Tour. Yeah, surprised to see her not win a stage at the Giro, but remember she did win 2 stages of the Vuelta earlier in the season, so she's done a little bit, but yeah, not the same freakish performance that we might have expected.
Yeah, and the Vuelta was a weird one because there wasn't I feel like it was a little bit of a different field, although she did have 2 wins there that were just completely insane. So good point, Matt. I think it was maybe just disappointing to see her not take that 33rd stage. Everyone's with the Tour going on and Cav and everything going on there, and everyone harping on about the record. Meanwhile, we've got Vos, who I don't know how much longer she's going to race. She's signed through 2025 with Jumbo-Visma, so assuming another 2 years, and in that time, if she can take 3-4 more Giro titles, then she'll have beaten the Tour record at the Giro. And of those wins, I mean, it's mountaintops, sprints, time trials. It's literally everything. Overall victories. She's won the overall twice. Or 4 times? No, twice. And she's just amazing. She's unbelievable. Even though she didn't win a stage, she's still notable in that she'll be one of the riders to watch going into the Tour. And also just the stats. The stats are 2006.
I've said this before about Vos, but one of the things I love about her, one of the many things I love about her, is just the fact that she still just wants to keep winning. I think for some people, when you'd won as many races as she had, you'd be kind of yeah, right, I didn't get that one, but look at all these other cool things I've done. But for her, it feels like every win just means as much as, her first win. And I really respect that. I think that's a really good attitude to have, and that's probably a big part of why she's won so much along the way. She's never content to just sit back. She always wants to win, and that's cool. And
you could clearly see she was so disappointed. I mean, happy for Consoni when she won that stage. There's a really nice picture of her shaking the hand with a big smile. And I'm sure she's excited to see all these young, fresh faces coming through. She always seems to, like you were saying, Matt, she'll take that disappointment and turn it into victory the next time. Whereas I feel there are other riders that just get beaten down and it takes a while to come back up. But I'm sure she's back on the bike in the Netherlands now, or wherever she is training, and just ready to get going for the Tour. And you know what? The World Championships, I would say.
I don't know. Hannah called Lorena Wiebes, and I can't not see that.
Nah, Grace Brown. Grace Brown said it's sickening. She said it's a real lot of Kopecky, but she doesn't really have the team around her. It sounds like a really hard. But I'm gonna eat my socks here. The way Lorena Wiebes is turning herself around into a mountain climber now, then yes, probably. But I would say it was a really nice send off for Marta Bastianelli. Am I saying that correctly? I'm so scared about pronouncing names because
you've got me on the podcast, so you can't do worse than that.
English is like my second language. I'm Australian, so I just am quite nervous about pronouncing names. Please don't come for me. I'm not very good at it, but yeah, it was a really nice send off, I think, for her and UAE that last stage as a flip story.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love the kind of full circle moment of Consoni winning the final stage last year and the final stage this year. And she's such an exciting rider. She had like such a rough going the beginning of this year. And I'm so happy to see her win. And she's always like, she's just so raw and emotional, and she was so happy to take this win. And definitely for Bastianelli, who's been in the sport for 18 years, it was her last day racing. And it was, would have been just such a massive moment for the team to take that victory. I hope they had some really great celebrations afterwards.
How much of a flex of it? How much of a flex is it when Annemiek has won so many pink jerseys that she can hand one out to every teammate? Like, that should be standard. Like, if my GC rider wins a Grand Tour, like, I need to put that on my wall. Like, give me the spare. Like, that is just such a flex and should be standard for all Grand Tour winners.
And her final pink jersey.
Yeah, final pink jersey. But she took the first one and held it through the entire week after the completely insane time trial that was canceled. And winning that second stage, first real stage, and holding the pink jersey, like not even really holding it. It was like the race was over from the get-go.
But it still wasn't boring. It still wasn't too bad. Like, I didn't mind it. It was sewn up. But I also think what happens is that when the GC is such a big gap between maybe 1 or 2, or in another race going on at the moment, 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, there's a big gap. You see those secondary and third teams start fighting it out. So it sort of then starts playing into Movistar and Annemiek during the week, because you started seeing, Ewers trying to fight for her position, or second and third trying to fight for their position. And so, Movistar doesn't have to do as much work. So I did still find that battle in the minor placings pretty exciting, and just teams trying to get anything out of this race.
No, I think a really good point is the kind of the breakthrough stars of this Giro. Like, while Annemiek was kind of doing her Annemiek thing, we had a ton of other storylines that we could follow. One of them being Veronica Ewers and her fight to stay on the podium, and then kind of tussle with Menyaldi to stay in 4th place overall. And that 3rd place for Veronica is just a massive result. Like, I think she went into this race having had a really rough start to the season and not feeling super great about how it had gone so far. And maybe she was a little bit bummed about finishing second behind Elise Lamborghini, but she still beat Van Vleuten to the line. And it's just such a huge result for a rider who's literally only been in the World Tour peloton for 1 full year before this season. Last year was her first year racing in the World Tour. So it's crazy to think that she's come so far to finish 4th overall at the Giro. And she's one of the breakthrough riders of the Giro in my eyes, as well as, Ali Wollaston, your call, Tills, for the rider to watch. She had such a good race in the final stage, taking 3rd. That's a massive result for her. And one of the other breakthrough riders, like, she's been on the scene for a really long time, but to finish 2nd overall at the Giro, Juliette Labousse, like, she had an awesome race, and so did DSM, to keep that 2nd place overall. And she'll be going into the Tour, if she is going to the Tour, her home Tour, like, as a French woman, finishing 2nd overall at the Giro and looking ahead to the Tour, that's gotta feel like a really huge boost to your confidence.
Yeah, and she was 4th overall at the Tour last year, so podium this year. I mean, I feel like all going well, it'll be Van Vleuten and Vollering in those top 2 places in whatever order they end up. But yeah, that podium feels like it's pretty open, or at least Labousse is a very good shot. Can we talk about Antonia Niedermayer as well?
Absolutely. You read my mind. My rider, you should know for the week, Antonia Niedermayer, and that win that she took was just incredible. And the final, it was like a nail-biting finale watching her ride to the line, being chased by the world champion in the pink jersey. And she's so young, and it's her first year on Canyon SRAM's elite team. She was on their development team last year. And to take that stage and then to go from that winning a stage of the Giro, a world tour, grand tour, to crashing the next day, just a horrific crash, the roller coaster that would have been. And just like, I think such an impressive victory and just such a devastating end to her Giro. But I mean, also she's so young. She's got so much ahead of her.
That's the thing. Like, she's 20 years old. For those that are interested in learning more about her story, I kind of dug into her history a little bit and wrote a story for Escape Collective last week after her stage win. So yeah, give that a read if you're interested. But the thing that stood out to me was just how young she is and how successful she's been so young. But you look at every step of her progression along the way, and each step up has been very fast. She's had success. She was a mountain runner early in her career and then went to ski mountaineering. And in each of those steps, she was very successful straight away. And then she took to cycling and was successful straight away. And, last year as a 19-year-old, she won 2 stages in the Tour of the Ardèche, which is a fantastic effort. And then here in the Giro to win a stage, first world tour win is amazing at 20. And yeah, obviously a horrible way for her race to end, and no one wanted to see that. It was a horrible crash, but the future is so bright for her, and another really good prospect for Canyon SRAM as well. We've talked about that this season, how after a few years of them struggling to get the big results, they seem to have found a really good bunch of young riders that are putting up great results and really showing themselves. And I think the future is really exciting for that team and for Niamh in particular.
And that team's always been actually really good at identifying talent, nurturing it, and bringing it up to a certain level. I think sometimes what happens with that team is some riders just stay a bit too long. And sometimes you need a change in order to progress further. But, they've got some really exciting riders, and it's nice to see that team really in the mix and getting organized throughout the whole race, actually.
On that note, I actually have another audio diary from Sarah Roy from after the stage yesterday. She talks a bit about Niamh Bradbury, the younger rider who won the Zwift Academy a couple years ago and has been on Canyon SRAM for a couple years now, Australian. Really incredible human being. She's very soft-spoken, very, very interesting. If you ever get a chance to hear any interviews with her, I highly recommend. Maybe I'll get her on the podcast. She's just really quiet. It's kind of hard to have an interview. But she's just fantastic. And she went into the race as one of their GC riders and had a little bit of a rough go. But yeah, Sarah talks about that. So let's hear from Sarah again.
Hey, Abby. Sorry, I nearly forgot to send you a voice message today. Already packed up, said goodbye to the team, and just hanging out in the city of Olbia at the moment. I've had some fish and chips for dinner, and I've just had a gelato, and considering on continuing back into another gelato shop to try some different flavors from a different place. But it's so freaking hot. The gelato melted basically as they were scooping it into the cone. So today was another really hot day. I reckon yesterday and today were the hottest stages out there. And it was actually quite funny in the Pello. Riders were just going psycho for bottles and water and just taking biddens from other teams that weren't their own Swannies. There was a lot of desperation out there. But what happened today in the actual race? I think everybody will be pretty grateful that it wasn't raced really aggressively. There was a climb 5k into the race, which was a bit of a worry because it was pretty solid, around 5k at 5.5% or so. And I think there would have been a few people that weren't sure if they'd get over that one, but it was raced pretty. It was pretty chill in the bunch. So good for us. And then around 70k in, there was another big berg to get over, which was a bit of a sticking point again. Few uncertainties with how many we would get over as well from our team. But again, it wasn't raced very hard. We did have Paulina on the front to sort of pick up the pace a little bit. but yeah, it didn't really cause any damage, and we ended up going to the line with pretty much a bulk of the bunch, which meant it was a big mass sprint, and we were all in for Chloe. Tiff and I actually had so much fun. I had a lot of fun racing today, following Tiff around, just negotiating just the fast bunch, the really nice descents. Actually, it was really fun descending at the front and just trusting all the wheels in front. And yeah, actually there was quite a lot of descending today. So yeah, in the end it was a nice stage on the legs, to be honest. A lot of down, and then what was I going to say? Just at the top of the main climb, which, you know, when it came up on my hammerhead like that, it was 11 Ks, and I just sort of shit myself for a second, being like, oh God, here we go. But yeah, it wasn't super steep, and it wasn't raced super fast. But then when you got to the top, you didn't just get to descend 11 Ks. You're just kind of hanging around at the top on this sort of plateau, and then it was like rolling hills for another 20 K. And on all of these little hills, some people were attacking, and, you know, I was pumped to be in great position, but then that also meant that I needed to sort of cover all these attacks. So it was kind of hard up there. But yeah, I came into the sprint and I was following Tiff around, and she did a great job leading Chloe and I around. And then, I don't know, I think it was about 1K, and we started to get a bit swarmed, and so we had to ask Tiff to peel off, and then I took over. So I went a bit earlier again than we would have liked, but I think we did a pretty good lead out for the numbers that we had there in the final, and it was pretty hectic. It was really fast. It was a big bunch. But yeah, I'm happy that I went through that final corner on the front, and just, you know, went for as long as I could, and I just stuck to one side and hoped that Chloe would find her way around, because that's basically how she likes to be supported in sprints. So yeah, she felt that she got a bit boxed in and ended up finishing fourth, but so not the win that we were hoping for after some really good sort of lead outs in previous sprint stages where we felt like it was really starting to come together, and that, you know, this might be the one. So kind of an anticlimax, really. Finishing the Giro is funny because it's a big one. It's a grand tour. Some really great opportunities, you know, like nine days of opportunities, and then kind of walking away with a bit of drama in our team, I guess, from that first day being cancelled, with that time trial being rained out, but having Chloe crash, and then sort of racing the rest of the tour quite sore. She was carrying a donut around and sitting on a donut. She had a sore bum. And, you know, then Antonia with her big win, but then crashing out the next day and needing some dental work and leaving the tour. And then also we came into the tour with Niamh Bradbury as a GC hope, but she's just not quite feeling herself. And yeah, the first road stage, she was off the back a bit, so lost time on GC there, and in the end was, working for the rest of the days. And so, yeah, I don't know. It feels like these things come and go so quickly. I think I said that yesterday. But, yeah, pretty happy for myself, actually, to get through these sort of 10 days away after the year that I've had. This is the best I've felt all year, and it's taken a really long time to get here. And, I mean, I only had 2 weeks of training for the Giro, and I did as much as I could in that time, you know, some heat training in the heat suit. And yeah, I just really killed myself for those 2 weeks to get here in the best shape that I could. And I feel like I've come out feeling even better. So I'm really happy with that. And we'll see what happens now for the rest of the year. Thank you for listening to my jibber.
And it's really hard, I think, for young riders to process that, particularly if we look at how well, Niamh Bradbury did last year. It was a breakthrough performance almost. We couldn't stop talking about it. And then I think going into this year as a GC rider, to not fulfill that expectation of herself is super hard. And hopefully she just has the support around her to bounce back from that, because she is talented and she's a hard worker and she's really stuck it out to be where she is.
Yeah, she had a rough time in the pandemic. Like being so far away from home and being stuck in Europe, and she didn't get to go home for a really, really long time. And I remember talking to her at the end of 2020, and it was just like really, she didn't know she wanted to keep racing at all. And then to come back in 2022 and have such a great time at the Giro. This will be a blow for her, but I think like that team has hired some new riders in the last year that I think are really changing the atmosphere there and making it a more successful place to be. And I think Sarah Roy is actually one of those riders for sure.
But I think Niamh's an absolutely beautiful soul. She comes from a gorgeous cycling family in Melbourne. And I think we forget that she had a really bad accident. I think it was in the London races where she hit that signpost in the middle of the road. So her build up for this was a lot of it, obviously, for the sponsors on Zwift. So I think she didn't have the best lead in. I thought it was interesting. I felt like Sarah Roy was really showing, I think she might actually be on a contract year, but I really saw Sarah Roy playing that role of really trying to not necessarily mother, but really try to pass on a lot of that experience. And I think we sort of saw quite a few, as you talked about, you as being a first year, sort of still quite new to the peloton. I think it is a little bit more challenging for these younger, newer riders who are taking on these GC roles, because usually it's lost on a mountain, and at the end of the day, it's just you. It's not like in a sprint where there's 1,000 different decisions and there's so many sliding door moments that, yes, your team can work all day, but you got boxed and there was, it wasn't necessarily you, but you're sort of seeing on the mountain stages, it's just you, it's just a fitness test, and then you didn't have it on the day. So I think that sort of pressure can be quite difficult. But all of those women had great teams rally around them. And just, the best thing about cycling is there's another race around the corner.
Man, isn't there just?
What's around the corner? Can I just touch on, speaking of mother hens, I need a Lizzie Deignan in my life. The way that I am going to say mothered. I'm sorry. I don't mean to box you. Yes, you're a mother. But the way she guided that little duckling of Gaia Riolini through the peloton, if there was anyone that grew over this Grand Tour, it was Gaia. Yeah. And you see, do you know who needs one is actually Chloe Dygert? Because you saw her, she wins, the amount of places.
One, but...
No, exactly. She wouldn't. But the amount of places she gains in those sprints is ridiculous. She should have won so many more races by now, but she just can't she's not holding the wheel, and the peloton knows that. So they know that they can chop the shit out of her and take that wheel. Where Riolini, I wouldn't go near her if I had a Loretta Hanson or Lizzie Deignan around. Loretta Hanson's such a good bodyguard, but the way that Deignan, if you watch her, the amount of time she's looking back, the amount of time she grabbed her and took her to the front and got her into great position. And the best thing is that Daigen's actually also going really well at the moment. So, you see a lot of these bodyguards that they're not actually the best people in the peloton. Yes, they can guide you through a sprint, but they may not be able to get you up the mountain and then also get you into good position. But yeah, I really would love a Lizzie Deignan. And when we talk about what teams you would go to, you're not just looking at who's the best, but the way they develop these riders and look after them. Gaia Riolini, the way she's grown as a rider this week was also a bit of a standout, I reckon.
Can we just go back to Loretta Hanson? Did anyone else think she had an amazing tour? And how great is she climbing?
She just kept coming back. And then they were just Loretta's there. And I was like, what? But the gruppetto.
She's still there with
and
climbers?
Yeah.
It was amazing. So that was great to see.
Shout out.
Also, she did really, I must say, for the audio diaries, it's hard for them to remember to record an audio diary after a day of racing. I cannot be more grateful to the women who agreed to do the audio diaries for me. Loretta was always the first to deliver her audio diary. She would do really amazing pre-race audio diaries as well and answer questions from people on Instagram. It was just, man, I feel like I've always really respected her as a rider, but the audio diaries and interacting with her to get those made me really respect her a lot as a human being as well, because those aren't easy to record. I mean, yeah,
she's so down to earth, like, and she's such a legend. Like, she's never had a big head, and I think that like you can sometimes forget about her a little bit. But I think she was on for an incredible season. She had an unreal summer in Australia, and then again she crashed really early in the Spring Classics. Missed Paris-Roubaix again. She's never done Paris-Roubaix. Built herself back up. Had to go back home. She was in Melbourne for all of the spring, which just would have been heartbreaking for her to be watching. Built herself back up, and here she is again. So yeah, absolute kudos to where she's gotten herself back to, and yeah, I think deserves a lot more promotion for how important she is to that team.
She's an absolute asset. I think she has become, in my eyes, the super domestique in that team. She is just so strong, and she's diversifying as a rider too. With every year, her climbing abilities just continue to impress me as well. She's just always there. Which they need. I mean, they've got such a strong team this year, Trek, in terms of climbing, I think. But yeah, it's just good to see a really, like you said, Abby, a great human being succeeding. It was shit. She had some really bad luck this year, but I think the future holds really great things for her.
In kind of the conversation of super domestiques, she's not a domestique, but I do believe that she deserves a mention, and that's Liane Lippert. She was also incredible in this race. Like, there was the final stage, she was on the attack like all day. You could tell that she got a little bit of free range with Annemiek having a massive buffer in the overall. And I'm just really excited to see next year is going to be such a weird year for the peloton without having Annemiek. It's like when Van der Breggen retired and there was like this massive, you like felt like you forgot something at home, but you couldn't quite remember what it is. You're like rummaging through your pockets. You're like, I feel like something's missing.
Writing reviews. I'm like, I'm missing a name here. Like, there's
major contenders.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to feel like not typing like contenders. Annemiek is out and out is going to be like such a weird thing next year. But I think Movistar can feel really confident in their hiring of Liane Lippert for kind of the future of the team, because she was riding really, really well, and definitely is an exciting prospect for when that team doesn't have Annemiek as their GC leader.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned her, because I know Gracie would want us to have mentioned Liane Lippert. And yeah, great that she got some opportunities there, and she is down to race the Tour as well. So I'm very keen to see how that goes, and hopefully she gets some chances there. As we've said a few times in recent episodes, she's such an exciting rider, and as you said, Abby, next year once Van Vleuten is gone, there'll be even more for her. But with the Tour right around the corner, I think that'll be exciting for them to give her some opportunities too, particularly if Van Vleuten's 5 minutes ahead on GC or something by stage 2.
I want to wrap up this episode by talking a little bit about what the Giro is going to be like in the future without Annemiek. Because as we saw, Demi skipped the Giro. She's focused fully on the Tour. At least Ashley Moulin-Pasio also skipped the Giro in favor of the Tour. And Van Vleuten has always taken this race as kind of the biggest race on her calendar, and she did that again this year, even with the Tour coming up, which is obviously another huge target for her. And without her being in the Giro next year, it is going to be a massive year for Italians, I think. We have so many Italians in the peloton that are just really, really close to that top step, and they haven't won the Giro since 2008. So they're going to be looking at a Annemiek van Vleuten-less peloton at the Giro in 2024. And of course, it's an Olympic year, so that always kind of messes with people's schedule and how people decide what races to do. But it might be next year with the Olympics that the Giro is actually more of a target than the Tour. So I think it'll be a really interesting year next year without Annemiek, and it's going to be a really open general classification, which is something that we've not seen in 7 years. You
mentioned there, Abby, about it being 7 years since Van Vleuten's been dominant, or that since it's been that open, and of course we're talking about the Anna van der Breggen era as well. So this will be the first time in a long time that neither of those two will have been racing, and you remove Van Vleuten from the GC in this year's race, and it's pretty close at the top. It's only 30 seconds between Labous and Riolini, and then you throw Lisa Longo-Borghini in there, and a bunch of others. It is very open next year, and I think it'll make the race a lot more interesting. And it wasn't. I mean, personally, I found the Van Vleuten show a bit overbearing this year. It kind of took away a bit of the enjoyment. I understand what you're saying, Tills, about it not being totally disappointing, but for me, it will be more exciting next year when Van Vleuten is gone. And I can't wait to see who steps up. And Marta Cavalli as well is another good one, obviously. Is a good point.
No, I just wanted, Abby, before you wrap up this piece, I just want to say you guys did such a good job bringing the audio diaries and just trying to take us behind the scenes, because I think there's another bike race going on at the moment. There's the Ashes, there's the F1, there's Wimbledon, there's so much other sport happening at the moment, and this race did everything they could to make sure that we didn't know what the F was going on. And so I just think you and the riders and Hannah Barnes did a fantastic job. So thanks for, I guess, sharing what was actually going on in the race. It helped a lot sort of be more engaged.
Thank you so much.
Abby, we could have used that content, I don't know how many years ago, when it was searching on Twitter for rogue videos
3 years
from
ago when there
and
was
stuff.
no live coverage. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. I enjoyed making the coverage, and it was great to have Hannah get behind a mic. I've been trying to get her to do podcasts with me for I don't know how long I've known her, 7-8 years. So that was, really fun. I'm going to close out this episode having talked a bit about Annemiek and this being her last Giro. I reached out to Iris Slappendel and also Gracie Elvin, who you will be familiar with, to talk about Annemiek and her progression through the ranks to become the rider she is today. Iris was teammates with her on Rabobank when she first went pro back in the day and was part of that team that won Voss yellow jersey. So she just sent me a 11-minute long audio message that I'm really excited to hear. And we also have Gracie, who was part of the team that won Annemiek her very first Giro. So two really great perspectives of Annemiek as the queen of the Giro that we know and love. Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back, really soon to talk about what's coming up in the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift.
Abby, did you want to do a what are we obsessed with this week? No?
Fuck, Matt, fuck. I was so excited that you forgot.
It's like the student asking the teacher whether they have to hand in the homework or not, and everyone's like, shut up.
You were that guy.
You're going to get beaten
I'm sorry,
behind the school shed later.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Matt, you're totally right. Okay, so before we hear from Iris and Gracie, I will kick off what we're obsessed with this week, and it will come to zero people's surprise. And Matt already knows exactly what I'm going to say. But on Friday, thankfully on the rest day of the Giro, Taylor Swift released Speak Now, Taylor's version, 13 years after the original release of Speak Now. And I gotta say, I waited for 2 years to listen to this album. I didn't listen to the original version or any of the songs on it for 2 years, except for Never Grow Up, because that's on Lila's bedtime playlist. And I just listening to this album for the first time, for the second time, man, I cried, I screamed. It was the most amazing, and I haven't turned it off since. And I'm there's a couple of the vault songs that I'm just totally obsessed with, and that's Electric Touch featuring Fall Out Boy, so real throwback there. And When Emma Falls in Love, which is just a really, really great song. She also has a music video that she released, and it's really good. So
I have a question, Abby. There's been a lot of controversy about the lyric change in Better Than Revenge, the allegedly misogynistic lyric that she wrote back in the day that she has now changed. What do you think about that change?
Unlike many people on the internet, I'm glad that she changed the lyric. I think it reflects how she's grown as a person, but also how society has changed in terms of how women treat each other and kind of view each other. When she wrote that lyric, we lived in an age of comparing a lot more comparisons to other women and putting other women down to make yourself, seem better. And that lyric is very much like a dinosaur of its time. And so I understand the controversy of why people don't like the change, but I also think that with the time we're in now, and when I play this album for Lila, because I won't play her the original version, obviously, when she hears Speak Now for the first time, I mean, she's heard it for days at this point, but when she hears it actually and is able to listen, I want her to hear, I don't want her to be repeating the original lyric. So I'm totally fine with the new lyric. I don't like the new lyric though. Like, how I feel like she could have come up with something a little bit snappier, but whatever. What bothers me is everyone's like, oh, the anti-feminism of this one line in Better Than Revenge. And Superman is sitting right there. Like, that's the most anti-feminist song I've ever heard in my life. Oh, you're going to go off and save the world. I'll be waiting here at home. I love you. Like, that song freaking sucks. I hate, everyone's like, oh, anti-feminism, Better Than Revenge. And I'm like, Superman is literally the epitome of anti-feminism. So I don't understand what you all are upset about.
I know what we need.
I
I think we need a whole podcast dedicated to talking about music, and specifically an episode of that podcast where we talk about this album. What do you reckon?
I agree. What should we call it?
I reckon the album file sounds pretty good. What do you reckon?
Man, that's got a certain ring to it. But I don't know if we can do it alone. I think we should maybe call up One More Voice. If anyone wants to hear who that surprise voice is, tune in to the Album Files podcast in August.
Season 2 coming soon.
Matt, what are you obsessed with? Since you're the one who reminded me about this segment.
Yeah, sorry everyone. I've just got a really simple one. I had a really busy weekend, just with family stuff. We had a family get together with my partner's family on Friday night. We had a little boy there who's almost 2. We then went to a family gathering the next night with my family, and then went and visited my grandma the next day. All just really busy, full days of family and kids and spending time together. And I don't know. I don't really know what else to say other than it just felt very wholesome and very satisfying and nice to hang out with people and people you're close to. And yeah, I'm not being particularly articulate here at all, but it was just a reminder that particularly the people that are a bit further away, absolutely worth making the effort to see them. And it's a good feeling to do that. So
when's Luca's birthday, Matt?
September.
Okay. Harry's 2 in
September.
2 weeks? July 25.
The day of the Olympic, the women's Olympic road
when
race.
I didn't respond to 200 messages. She's definitely in labor.
Poor Loren. Poor Loren. The freewheeling chat was just popping off, and everyone was. And when Loren didn't respond within, 2 minutes of the race, we were like, "Oh, she's in labor."
Memories.
Loren, you got anything you're obsessed with?
More, actually, a bit like Matt. I'm spending a lot of time at home at the moment, and just really, enjoying being with my son.
Very wholesome. Okay, I'll take it in a direction that obviously says I don't have children. This question has actually been on my mind. It's freaking me out, and I'm a Gemini, and slightly anxious, so I have a lot of things on my mind. But I'll start with I'll say what's on my mind and a recommendation, so we can finish on a high. But do you know what's been on my mind is actually social media, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm going through, so we've Threads has just launched, and obviously I'm hitting you all with the big issues here.
What is Threads?
World famine. Exactly. So Threads is Instagram's new platform. It's taking on Twitter. Essentially, like you go on, it's more of a discussion page. Like we fucking need to hear more of what people think. But you go on there, and all the people that you follow and all the people that follow you are automatically following you on there.
Okay.
So it is easier for brands because they've already harvested everyone's IP on there. So there's sort of that, but then there's sort of Instagram as well at the moment. And I think you go through phases of if you're having a little bit of a challenging time, then Instagram can be like a hard place to be on potentially. But I think, and then I also go it's just trying to come. I used to really love it, try to put out some humor and try to, be fairly positive, and you got sponsors and things like that. And then I just go through phases of like, could I just not be on there, for a whole year, or could I do a social experiment of going on there once a month or something? But it's so hard because you're fearful of what you'd miss out on, and potentially, going into the abyss of like, people also don't necessarily, they forget you sort of thing. So that's been on my mind a little bit.
I haven't been on Instagram since December. Conscious decision, because I wasn't having the best time in December. And then I was like, I just need to stop with that. But it's actually, honestly, it's great. Facebook is still there, but I don't use it. It's linked for work. But I don't even have the apps on my phone. So it's really interesting. I'm at the point now where other people pick up and scroll, and I see my partner scrolling, and I hate it. I honestly hate it. And sometimes in bed, I just look at him while I'm reading my book, and then he goes, okay, I'm sorry. And he puts it down. But the amount of time he wastes just mindlessly scrolling, and he's not engaging with the app. So he's not putting out content or, commenting on things, or really, he's passively using this technology. And I think when you're passive with it, then I don't see any benefit to it. If you're just passively consuming and you're not interacting, it goes for Twitter and all that. I only go on Twitter now to look at race results or something like that, just to stay in the loop. So my consumption usage of social media is like vastly changed in the past year. And so actually that's like something I'm quite proud of. I don't have sponsors anymore. I'm not an athlete. No one really cares what I'm doing. If I decide to write a book, maybe I will go back and sharing what's going on in my life. I think the people who know me know, and for the rest, like if they want to know, then yeah, exactly.
They can ask.
I'll finish on a recommendation, because I feel like you guys always have really good recs, even though Matt, I'll never read the sci-fi because it just seems like too big a project. It sounded great, but it's too beyond me. Like I needed one book, I didn't need 10. But I just finished, like literally in 3 days, there's a new book called Yellowface. It's really, really easy if you're struggling with, when you need a book to get back into reading, or like you don't want to take a risk on a book and you get halfway through and just go, I've invested too much time here and this book is shit and I have to finish it. Yellowface, really easy. You'll finish it in a few days. This is just the back of it, but essentially a author dies and her best friend steals her manuscripts and publishes it as her own. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so get that. And cold showers. I'm into cold showers, guys, every day. I finish my shower with 30 seconds. I'm currently living in Christchurch where it's 0 degrees. You have no idea what cold is until you've tried a cold shower in Christchurch, but it actually is really good. So if you're struggling with social media, have a cold shower.
No, it's a great recommendation. Do it before bed as well.
Cold showers, get back on it, 30 seconds. Ooh, it's better than therapy. And I'm done.
All right. Well, yeah, not everyone can have like a cold plunge in the back of their car like some guy at some race in France. All right. We'll end the episode with Gracie and Iris. Thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, talk to you next week.
Hey, Abby. So here comes my not so small audio diary, because you asked me to say some words about Annemiek's career, and especially her Giro career. And actually, when I thought about it, that goes a long time back. So, I'm not really someone from very short answers, so prepare for a long diary. But my very first memory with Annemiek in the Giro is back in 2010. I think it was Annemiek's first Giro, but I'm not 100% sure. I was riding at that time for the Sevilla test team. And Annemiek was there, I think, with the Dutch national team. And it was a really hard Giro. We had some pretty big mountain stages. And for example, we had one stage that finished in Livigno, of all places, where Annemiek spent a lot of time the last few years. But we finished there, and we were both in the biggest gruppetto, like the big group in the back, actually together with Anne van der Breggen and Ellen van Dijk and a lot of other riders who did a lot better after that. But it was probably the first and the last time that I was sharing the gruppetto with Annemiek. She finished 27th in the Giro. She won La Route de France, by the way, next month. But the Giro, she was actually doing pretty okay in some stages, but in other stages, not so much. And I know we were talking in that gruppetto, because that's what you do in a gruppetto. And she was also telling me that at that time, she didn't really believe that she was maybe doubting if she could be a good climber, yes or no, or if she could do well in a stage race. And I think also then at that time she was in a team, it's called Nederland Bloeit, where also the sport director did not really believe that she would be like a good climber or a stage racer. So I think that was really a different phase in her career. I think a lot changed in the years after. We became teammates then in 2012 at Rabobank Live. And in 2015, we moved to Cervelo Bigla together. So we've been teammates for 4 years. And like I say, those first few years, her results were very mixed in the Giro. And I think that had to do, there were different reasons. She suffered for a long time with arterial injury. I remember she crashed once out of the Giro with a broken collarbone. I think that was in 2012. And I remember this actually is kind of a, I don't know, nice memory in some way, because she became Dutch national champion the week before, but she didn't have the team kit, the national champion team kit on time. She only had one time trial suit in the Dutch colors, so she was wearing that every day. And she had to wash it every night, I think. Maybe in that way she was also ahead of her time, wearing a skin suit in a road race every day and having to stuff all her food in back pockets made by numbers on the back. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, unfortunately she crashed out of that with a broken collarbone. I think she actually continued 1 or 2 stages with the broken collarbone, but then she had to leave it. And I think those first few years with Rabobank especially were also different, because we always raced with Marianne Vos, who was our GC leader. And like I said, I don't think Annemiek had the trust in the team also that she was being that she could be a GC rider. And it took some years to start believing that herself. And I think also to find the right people around her to develop herself as a GC rider. In 2014, that was the last year with Rabobank. She finished 8th in GC in the Giro. That was also a crazy year, because the whole top 3 was Rabobank with Vos, Ferrand-Prévot and Van der Breggen 3rd. Even I finished top 50. So maybe one of my best Giro results ever. But Annemiek was 8th there. It was really... It was, it was great we could do so well as a team, but it was also really challenging to be with so many top riders in one team. And I think she made a wise decision to leave that team, and especially when she moved to Orica, Green Edge, Scott, whatever that team was called at that time, the Australian team. I think that was the best move of her career. She focused more on riding well in stage races. She became a better and better climber. She should have all the credits for that herself. She had multiple operations on her arterial injury. And when that didn't bother her anymore, she also had a much better chance to do good in GC. And 2017, that was the first Giro that she did really well in GC. She became 3rd behind Van der Breggen, and I think she could have won that Giro if she didn't lose time on a stage where she missed the first echelon, a windy stage. Yeah, and then, the rest is history. She won in 18, in 19, in 22, and now this year in 23. And those last few years, I've been following Annemiek from a bit more distance, not anymore as a teammate, but as a commentator on Eurosport, as a fan, and also as a friend, of course. And I have a lot of memories from Annemiek as a teammate. And I've seen her suffering a lot and being in pain a lot from up close. And for me, that's always been kind of a mixed emotion as well, because I really admire her extreme determination. I don't know a lot of athletes that are able to put themselves into that much pain, but it also really hurts as a teammate to see your friend or teammate suffering so much, and especially in the period she was dealing with that iliac injury, is not just going really deep in training, but it's also knowing someone or seeing someone is actually in a lot of physical pain. And I think for me, I just have a lot of respect that she believed in the fact that she could continue her career and she could come back after those operations. And I think, maybe that's one of her biggest achievements, when I look back to her career. But I also saw how much she enjoys it all. So all the preparations, making plans, making tactical plans, motivating her teammates, making them part of the success. Annemiek has seen a lot. She's definitely the kind of athlete that she can put things in perspective. And she has a life and interests outside of cycling, but she's also very capable of, as we say in the Netherlands, putting the blinders on and keep focus on one goal. And I think that's also one of the reasons she does so well at the Giro, because this is a race. I mean, it's easy to get distracted by all kind of things like issues, unpredictable things that can happen, long transfers, shit hotels, good hotels, changes in the course, weather, etc. I mean, the Giro is one big chaotic race. And you can have all these things take up your energy, or you can have yourself not be bothered by it and only make sure you put your energy in things you can influence. And that is a skill Annemiek is master of. And I think therefore she does always so well at the Giro. And I've said it also a few times during commentary this week. I will miss Annemiek being part of races next year. I love how she takes every opportunity to make the race hard, to put on a good battle, to fight for every second. And if she loses, she's a fair loser, as I think she also really enjoys the fact that she's being challenged. And maybe my favorite moment of this last Giro was her chasing Niedermayer and congratulating her after the finish. And also, I mean, Annemiek's post-race interviews, they're always really good, honest, and that's also something we will miss, or I will miss. And I mean, I think this is already quite a long story. And to be honest, when we were suffering in that gruppetto on our way to Livigno back in 2010, I had not envisioned Annemiek to become a 4-time Giro winner and one of the best riders in the history of cycling. But she did it, and she should have all the credits for it. And I'm just really happy to have seen that development from up close as a teammate and now in different capacities. And I'm also just happy that the season is not over yet, and I'm really looking forward to the races to come. And I really wish Annemiek and also everyone watching women's cycling to have some fun and some exciting battles in her last months of racing. That's it.
Hey Will Talk fam, so we just saw Annemiek van Vleuten take another pink jersey at the Giro Donne this year. It is her final year of racing. We haven't seen the dominance from her as we have in the past this year, but I was pretty pleased to see her be able to step up once again and take the pink jersey. We wanted to see a few small fairy tales happening for her this year. You know, you do want to see a rider go out on a high, and an ex-teammate of mine, I still love watching her race and seeing what she can do. I think from a physiological point of view, it's just pretty mind-blowing at what she's done already in the past, but also, you know, what she's still got left in the tank. One of my favourite ever memories from racing days with Annemiek was at the first time that she took the pink jersey in 2018. So the previous year, in 2017, I wasn't on the team that year. I think I was in America, but I think that they just had a couple of days where they just didn't quite nail it. And so in 2018, there was a lot of pressure on us because we knew that she could win it. But it was just about nailing it over the 10 days. And we brought a really strong team. Everyone was on great form. It was myself, Jess Allen, Sarah Roy, Amanda Spratt, Jolien D'Hoore, and of course Annemiek. So there were 6 of us. And Jolien was sprinting so well as well. Annemiek was obviously very strong. Amanda Spratt was also coming into her peak. I think we took 5 stages out of 10. And I remember just being so fit that year as well. I just had such a great run into the Tour. I think that was almost the fittest I've ever been. We nearly took the team time trial opening stage. I think we lost by 1 second. But for me, being able to keep up with Annemiek that day, I was just on a ripper day, and it was just, even though we didn't win, it felt like a win because we hadn't quite gotten that close to winning a team time trial as a team. So you could just tell it was a really awesome start for us. My job was to be the wingman, the bodyguard, the team captain, and I felt a great responsibility to be looking after Annemiek and making sure she was not caught out in the crosswinds, that she was well positioned going into important parts in the stages, and also looking after her in the finishes too. So sometimes I'd be part of the lead up for Jolien, and sometimes I would just be making sure Annemiek didn't lose any time if there were time gaps at the finish. And I think crossing the line on the very last stage, I cried. I think I was just so relieved. I was exhausted, of course, but I just felt like the weight was off my shoulders. I think I probably put a bit too much pressure on myself, but I just really believed in her. I believed in us as a team, and I didn't want to make any mistakes. So I just was so proud and so happy and relieved that we took that jersey. We got to celebrate on the podium. We got to have a good dance around, and we were just on such a massive high. And it was just so special. It was a really nice team. We had a lot of laughs along the way, and it was just one of the best races that I've ever been a part of as a team. So look, Annemiek, I'm very proud of you, but I was also very proud to be there for you from the start. So hopefully we can see a few more cool fairy tale endings for her this year. But yeah, that was one of my favorite cycling memories. Thanks, guys.